And I believe somebody can be an absolutely horrible spouse and still be an amazing parent. Or maybe they were a horrible spouse and not so great of a parent, but it doesn't mean that that can't change. And a difficult divorce does not have to result in years and years and years of difficult co-parenting, but it takes work.
You're listening to the Texas Family Law Insiders Podcast, your source for the latest news and trends in family law in the state of Texas. Now here's your host, Attorney Holly Draper.
Today we're excited to welcome Amy Tyson back to the Texas Family Law Insiders Podcast. We had Amy on quite some time ago to discuss her book, One Princess, Two Castles. Today we've brought her back to tell us about her latest resource for divorcing families and to talk about her new role as a divorce coach. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Holly. I'm so excited to chat again.
So for anyone who might have missed your first episode, first, I would encourage you to go back and find that one. Lots of good information in there. But for anyone who hasn't done that, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about your background?
Absolutely. So I am one of those many individuals that has not just been divorced once, but has been divorced twice. And I never say that to people for anybody to ever feel sorry for me. I want to let everybody know kind of the things I've been through and my children have been through, just so that they know I've chosen to take what I've been through, what my daughters have been through, and to use that to develop something that I truly believe can help so many individuals as they're going through the splitting of their family. And I'll kind of go through this real quick because we've got so much to chat about. But back during, I believe it was 2008, I was going through my first divorce. And at that point, I had two young daughters who were 4.5 and 7.5. And I had no idea how to even have that discussion about divorce. I didn't have a lot of friends that had walked that journey at that point in my life. And so I had turned to my local church, and the preschool minister had loaned me a book to help facilitate that discussion. And I remember I had their dad meet us at this treat area, and I spread out a princess blanket among all things for us to sit on to read this book. And it was a horrible experience. Number one, my daughters, or our daughters, hated the day. No child is ever going to embrace that day with excitement, right? Because they feel as if the world is falling apart. There's so many unknowns. But to make matters worse, I was not able to soften that blow, and I was just devastated because here I'd used the resource I had been loaned and pretty much had walked through a conversation as I had been guided to walk through. So many, many years later, I have now left a second marriage and now have a third little girl who at this point is 5. And to be real honest, I'm not even looking at how to have that conversation because I was just in survival mode, like so many people. And I remember one day I was in the middle of folding laundry, and all of a sudden the phrase, one princess, two castles, comes into my head. And Holly, it was just so clear. I just can't even explain how clear it was. And it was so strange to me at the time. I wrote it down on a little scrap of paper and I put it in a silver box because I just knew nothing like that had ever happened to me before. And I didn't think anything about it for months and months and months. And it is now time I have got to tell my youngest daughter. My older two knew because we had already moved out. And there was just double this pressure because here I was going through divorce number 2. And my two older daughters, who had been 4.5 and 7.5 when I had that conversation with them so many years ago, still very much remembered that day. Still very much remembered that book, all with very negative emotions. And now those two daughters who had been 4.5 and 7.5, one of them is about to enter high school. The other one's getting ready to exit high school. And I just remember thinking, if a book, if a resource has that much power over a child this many years later, I've got to get it right. And so at this point, I reach out to the counselor at my youngest daughter's school, who did not have a book in her counseling library at that point, but recommended one to me on Amazon. And so I ordered it. And long story short, it comes in, I'm home alone. And I just remember staring at the title of that book and just being put off. And I thought, no, it's been recommended. You've got to read it. And so I remember reading through it all alone. And I didn't even make it through the whole book, Holly. I shut it because I thought this is not the way to go about it, or at least not the way I wanted to tell my own little girl. And at this point, I wasn't thinking about the potential millions of other children and parents walking this journey. I was only thinking about my youngest little girl. And I threw the book away and I sat down at my desk and wrote what you and so many other family law firms carry for your clients today, which is the book, One Princess, Two Castles. And, quite honestly, I wanted to create a book for my own little girl and now for so many other families that it doesn't so much explain the mechanics of a divorce, but the emotions behind it. I wanted to give my little girl and so many other boys and girls out there permission for their hearts to hurt. Because, no matter how you go about it, your child's heart is going to hurt. There's a lot changing for them. But I also wanted to give an unapologetic permission, for their little hearts to feel very excited about spending time with both parents, regardless of what was going on behind the scenes. Because here is the deal, and we'll talk about this with my coaching, but I firmly believe if you figured out how to have a child with that other parent, you better figure out how to co-parent. And that child deserves to have a relationship with both parents and to know and understand both parents love them and to feel excited about spending time with the other parent and helping to facilitate that relationship. I feel very strongly about that. But thirdly, on the book, it has a phrase that's so important. Things will be different, but things will be good. And this applies to both parent and child, because I'm a huge believer that mindset is so important. And just because things are going to be different from your living arrangements to maybe you're going back to work, to your custody, to your finances, just because it's different doesn't mean it has to be bad. And so let's look at the good that can come out of even those difficult situations.
So I know you have a new resource available now that's kind of a companion to your book, but I guess could probably stand alone too. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so my newest resource, it's a journal, and it's called Little Hearts, Big Feelings, and it can absolutely be a standalone product. This journal has a much bigger age range for it. This is for children ages 4 to 15, and it has targeted prompts for children and teenagers to draw out their feelings. So as a former educator, I really, truly believe that children are more readily able to express their emotions through drawings versus even written text, and especially verbal text and verbal communications. We know as adults, right? How hard is it sometimes to have those difficult conversations and express our emotions? Well, you take a child and even a teenager who they don't know how to have those conversations. And you couple that with so much of the time, they are often carrying the burden of their parents' pain, whether they're hearing things spoken, they're seeing text messages coming across, or they're just picking up on body language and facial expressions. And they have got to be able to express their emotions. So when I created this, it's got targeted prompts that help these children go through their emotions and also help their parents to understand where their children are coming from. And it's designed so that when the child or the teenager goes to bed, they're put to bed 15 to 20 minutes earlier. You have crayons, markers out on their nightstand, and you say, listen, you know what? I want you to work through this page in your journal. I'm going to go do the dishes, or I'm going to go exercise for a little bit. And then I'm going to come in and then I'll put you to bed. And when they put them to bed, that journal goes in the nightstand. It's not a time to discuss it with the child or the teenager. This is for the parent to look at much later on that the child has no idea about. It's simply to give insight. But for you all as family law attorneys and for any custody evaluators, it can be an excellent resource so that when you're handing over One Princess, Two Castles, you're also handing over a copy of this journal, and you say to them, listen, we know as adults, it's difficult sometimes to express our emotions, and it's a lot harder for children and teenagers. So I want to provide you with this resource. And occasionally when you come back in for our meetings, I'm going to have you bring this journal and we're going to look at these pages, because it can give you as that litigator and these custody evaluators a really good glimpse at what is really going on in this child or teenager's heart and mind. And this may very well change some of the things that you try to litigate.
So, can you give a couple of examples of the types of prompts that it includes?
Oh, absolutely. So it starts out real bubblegum or basic, as I like to say, to warm the kids up so they don't really realize kind of that they're going to be getting into the meat of their emotions. It starts out with simple things like draw a picture of yourself. Draw a picture and what are your favorite snacks? What are your favorite things for breakfast? And it goes on for some of their favorite things. And this is key because we know a lot of times when there's a splitting of a family, there's one parent that may not have been so involved in really rearing the child. And this helps that parent to get to know their child in a better way. Then it will get into draw a picture of your family. Well, for some people, they may think, what's the big deal with that? When you look at that picture, how is that picture drawn? Is there a big jagged edge down the middle? Is the child holding one parent's hand and the other parent is off, in the other side of the picture doing something else? Are there speech bubbles with things written that are not good? Are there tears? Are there smiles? Is somebody else added to this family picture that nobody knew anything about? It will also get into draw 4 things that make you feel afraid. Okay. Again, what is this child drawing or teenager drawing that makes them feel afraid? But then on the next page, it says draw 4 things that can help you to not feel afraid. Because I'm a huge believer, and I really do believe wholeheartedly that even young children can come up with healthy coping mechanisms to counteract some of those feelings. Then it'll get into mom and dad after we've grasped the emotions. And for everywhere that it asks or has prompts about the mom, it will have corresponding prompts about the dad because we know both parents, they're equally as important in this child's life, and they should be. So draw a picture of dad. What does that picture look like? Draw a picture of you with your dad. What are 4 of your favorite things that you like to do with your dad? And they're drawing those pictures. Again, very insightful for the attorney and the parents that are looking at this, because typically, number 1, it's not going to be all these expensive things that the parent is doing with their child. It's going to be quality time situations. And so you may have a parent coming in either for a divorce or a SAPS, or they're coming back in for a modification saying, my child doesn't want to spend time with the other parent anymore. We need to flip visitation, things like that. Well, if you've got a journal where this child is showing all these quality things that they like to do with the other parent, maybe that's not a modification that needs to be filed that way. It will say a thing like, draw a picture of 4 things you wish you could do with your dad. Again, it'll have a corresponding page for the mom. And chances are it's not going to be, I wish dad would take me to the mall. It's going to be, I wish dad would sit and read with me, or I wish dad or mom would go on a walk with me, things like that. It will also talk about, what do you think about when you go to bed at night? Okay, as an attorney, what is going through this child's head as they're going to bed at night? Okay, draw a picture of what can help you sleep better at night. What does that picture look like? Draw a picture of what you think of when you wake up in the morning. What can help your day to go better? What are 4 things that you wish mom and dad knew? Draw a picture of 4 things that you think are great about living in 2 homes. So it really goes through the whole process. And then at the very tail end, it says 2 homes and 2 parents that love me. So I really gave you a very condensed version, but it is a ton of pages. I want to say it's like 80 something pages. I need to go back in and look, but I'll give you an example. So for every page, there's a bubble font that the teenagers and the kids can color in or draw designs. And then it will have the page that goes with it. And at the beginning, there's a letter to the child and to the parent. So I really am hoping to help these individuals and their children to have hope, healing, and comfort, and give you guys some insight that you might not have gotten otherwise.
Well, that sounds super helpful. Before we dive into our next topic, where can people go to find out about more about One Princess, Two Castles or the journal?
Yes. So One Princess, Two Castles and Little Hearts, Big Feelings. And there's 2 different ways that they can get those. They can get them from family law firms that carry my resources. And there's a lot of those. Or they can get them from my website, which is happiness, NIN, theheartache.com.
Okay, so then the next issue I wanted to dive into today is to talk about your latest venture, which is working as a certified divorce coach. For anyone who might not be familiar, which is probably a lot of people, to be honest, what
Mhm.
exactly is a divorce coach?
Right. And I'm so glad we're getting to chat about this because number one, anybody can just say they're a coach, right? But did they go through training? And I think that is so important. I knew for me that I wanted to use what I'd been through to help other individuals. And I really felt like this was the next step. And I didn't hear or know anything about being a divorce coach up until probably about a year and a half ago. And then I checked into it and I thought, I wish I would have had one of those when I went through my divorces. And so here is the deal: a divorce coach does not replace an attorney or a therapist or anything like that. And I never tell anyone what to do. I am exploring what different paths look like if they are to take those. And my goal is to really help individuals end one chapter with grace and begin another chapter with confidence. And if they have children, helping them to co parent well, all while helping them to become a more credible client for their family law attorneys.
This episode of the Texas Family Law Insiders Podcast is sponsored by the Draper Law Firm, providing family law litigation in Collin, Denton, and Dallas counties and appeals across Texas. The Draper firm has represented parents in cases before multiple courts of appeals and prevailed in the Texas Supreme Court in one of the biggest parental rights cases in Texas history. For more information, visit draperfirm.com or call 469-715-6801.
So you mentioned becoming certified. What all was involved with becoming a certified divorce coach?
Yes, a lot. So I had classes beginning in August and then they finished up in December. We had classes twice a week. And then every other week, we would have training sessions with a mentor coach. And then every other week, we would do coaching sessions with a peer. And so it was a lot of reading, and there were assignments involved, and then a lot of practice. And so, like, what I'm so passionate about is now I don't just have the book knowledge, right? Or the educational knowledge. I have the heart knowledge. And I think when you put those two things together, it can really make such a difference for these individuals that are out there. Because, in my opinion, it's real hard to come up with an antidote if you have not experienced the sting of the pain. And so I feel like I'm combining those two things to really help people along this journey.
So, how does a divorce coach fit into the whole divorce process?
Right. So ideally, when you all have a client coming to you, the minute they retain you is when you also say, I want to recommend to you, we have a certified divorce coach and co-parenting coach. And then they reach out to me and we set up, I have different packages of sessions and I can meet with them in person or virtually. I love in person because I just love that. But I'm happy to do sessions with people virtually, which is great because I can truly meet with people all over the world as long as they have a Wi-Fi connection. And so basically, it's helping them to communicate about what they've been through, but also thinking about what the other parent is going through, right? Because it's real easy when you're going through a split of a relationship or your family, if you have children, is splitting, to become so stuck in that story of divorce. And so if they're stuck in that story of divorce, when they're meeting with you all as family law attorneys, how many times are they repeating, this isn't fair, they cheated on me, all the things. And it's difficult for those meetings with you all to be productive and to get on with that business of divorce. And so one of my big roles is helping them to get unstuck so that as they're moving through that process, and we know oftentimes it's not a short process, is really helping them to be their best self and the best parent and the best client they can possibly be.
So, I know a lot of times, and I'm sure you see this as well as, just an observer of Facebook moms groups or something, you see a lot of individuals looking at going through divorce who are trying to find ways of not having to hire a lawyer.
Right.
Does someone using a divorce coach still need to hire a lawyer?
Oh my word. Yes. I mean, that would just, yes, you absolutely need a family law attorney and you need a good family law attorney. And I think, what's awesome if you get a really, a divorce coach that's been out there in the community. You've got resources of family law attorneys that you can refer over to these individuals that are coming to you. So, for example, let's say, like if you refer somebody to me, obviously I'm not referring another attorney, but there could be somebody off one of those moms groups or in the community that comes to me first that doesn't have a family law attorney. And so then I will listen to their needs, and then I will think about the different family law attorneys that I have met with over the years, and I will recommend a small amount of attorneys based on their needs. It's never just one, but oh my goodness, I don't replace a family law attorney. I don't give legal advice. I'm not qualified to, and I don't want to. That is not my lane. But I would advise these women or men that are reaching out in these groups, boy, you better be really careful about the advice that you're given, and you need to seek wise counsel.
100%. So, is there any interaction if you're working with a divorcing client and they have a family lawyer? Is there any interaction between you and the attorney, or is what you're doing completely separate from what the attorney is doing?
That is a great question, Holly. And so let's say that you referred a client over to me. If the client gives me permission to communicate with you, then 100% I can do that. If it's a situation where they have not, I cannot. I feel like everything needs to be confidential. However, if I'm ever subpoenaed for court, then anything that person has said to me can be brought out in court. And so people need to be aware of that. But yes, I am happy to work hand in hand with you all as family law attorneys, as long as your client and the person that is coming to me gives that permission. And one thing I want to bring up too is that, so much of the time, it's not that you guys don't have the want to for that emotional hand holding. You don't have the time to. And so I am happy to provide that. So let's say you have a mediation coming up and you have a client and they're just stuck. They're so unsure. I'm happy to come to one of those mediations as long as it's in, this area, and sit as a form of support. Or let's say they're going for a temporary hearing or a final trial. I am happy to come and sit in the back of the classroom just as an added support.
So you said something about being subpoenaed, and that made me wonder if let's say that we think the other person on the other side might be working with a divorce coach. Is there a reason, A, that I should be asking that question in discovery, and B, that we might want to subpoena the divorce coach?
Well, I think that's certainly to your discretion, right? Because you have got a lot more knowledge, obviously, of the laws and things that are to gain by asking questions like that. I think it's important to remember, if the divorce coach is doing their job, you're not telling them what to do and you're not giving them answers. You are going to be hearing things. But with that being said, I would imagine, this was said to me by a family law attorney here recently. But again, I don't give legal advice, so I don't know. But it was, they said, listen, you only have so much time to get people up on that stand. And so you need to figure out who those most important people are. So that would be something to weigh, having a divorce coach up there versus and somebody else to ask questions. But I think that might not be a bad question to ask in your discovery. But I think also you have to remember, if somebody is seeing a divorce coach, I think that is a great thing, because they're not wanting to stay stuck. They're wanting to move forward. And if they have children, okay, they're wanting to move forward and figure out how to co-parent in a healthy way, hopefully. And that's what we want, right? I believe there needs to be a huge change. So that's my thoughts on that.
Right. I was thinking there's probably not a lot of bad that you can get out of the divorce coach. I guess if somebody's just spilling all their dirty laundry to the divorce coach, then possibly. But I would hope that it's more structured than that, and you're getting
yes, So we're trained to skillfully interrupt. I am not going to allow somebody to go on and on and on, just verbally spewing stuff because that's just not productive. So if it's a good divorce coach or co-parenting coach, they're not going to let that person stay stuck in that cycle. We're going to be moving on to be productive.
So knowing that there is a possibility the other side could seek discovery related to the divorce coach or could subpoena the divorce coach, why do you think attorneys should be comfortable with their clients using a divorce coach during this process?
Right. Well, as I was saying earlier, I don't think so much of the time that family law attorneys don't want to do the emotional hand holding. It's that you guys don't have time to. So much of the time, you all have got heavy caseloads, right? And you've got meetings stacked up for the day, or you're looking over what you need to get ready for your trial or your hearing. And you've got to move on. I had an attorney tell me recently, we had a really long meeting, and she said, I will have these clients that they are so stuck and they need that hand holding. And she was like, when I go in to present how much this client has spent with me, it can be huge. And she said, I don't ever want to look like I'm overcharging, but I've really been trying to help this person. And so here's the thing, if you have a divorce coach coming in, and that's a good one, right? That we can help do that hand holding. And my fees are typically going to be a lot less than an attorney's fees. And again, if I can help your client to get unstuck off that story of divorce when they're meeting with you, hopefully they've got some of those emotions reeled in and they're going to be more organized and better prepared to listen to you and send quality emails and hopefully better able to meet those deadlines for discovery and things like that.
Are there certain types of clients that you think would benefit the most from using a divorce coach?
I really think men and women equally, and there's some different reasons that I think both can benefit, right? Divorce is never easy. I mean, it's just not, any way you look at it. I think a lot of the time for women, especially those women that have been maybe stay-at-home moms for a stint, right? They're looking at, oh my goodness, I've got to go find a job. How am I going to provide, a place to live and all of those things? And I think it's common for both, but more common for women. And this is where, I came in to with my feelings is that for some women, they may have the degree, but all they really wanted to be in life was a wife and a mom. And when 50% of that equation has been taken away or destroyed, what are they left with? And now they're not going to have their child as much as they used to. And it's figuring out, okay, what do I want my life to look like and how can I lead that in the best way possible? But, I was talking with an attorney last week, and this attorney has lots of men clients. And, men a lot of the times are trained, you don't talk about your feelings, but you've got to talk about your feelings. And especially if you have children, you're going to have to process those and figure out how to communicate with your child, because children, whether it's a little girl or a little boy or they're older, they need good fathers. And part of being a good father is being a good communicator. And both sides learning how to co-parent in a healthy way, because here's the deal. It doesn't matter if they cheated. It doesn't matter if they weren't nice to you or you feel like you were ruined financially. That's the child's other parent, period, right? And I believe somebody can be an absolutely horrible spouse and still be an amazing parent. Or maybe they were a horrible spouse and not so great of a parent, but it doesn't mean that can't change. And a difficult divorce does not have to result in years and years and years of difficult co-parenting, but it takes work. And it may be more work on one person's side for a while, and then it kind of evens out. But if you love your child, you're going to put in that work, period.
So how would you say working with a divorce coach is different than working with a therapist?
Sure. And that's a great question. So I actually recently met with a therapist here in Frisco. She has a practice and she believes in my coaching so much. She's actually donating office space for me in her building, which was I was like, oh my goodness. But, oftentimes when you're going through a divorce, you need a great family law attorney but you also need a great therapist. And a therapist and a coach are completely different. I'm in a completely different lane. I don't diagnose people, with disorders or anything like that. As this therapist told me, she said, Amy, she goes, I need people to refer to. She said, I help them with the trauma, but I need them to help them through this journey, basically, of divorce and examining different pathways. There's just not enough time for them to do everything.
So if someone is, starting to work with a divorce coach, is there sort of a curriculum or something that is worked through, or is each individual's journey different?
That's a good question. And everybody is truly different, right? Because no divorce is the same. And it's going to depend if they have children. But the beginning, we always start with like a discovery session where I kind of hear what they've been through. And then we look at what they think that their goals are.
So any other tidbits of information you think our audience should know about divorce coaching?
No, I think that divorce coaching, it's a fairly new thing that's out there. And I think that it can really help individuals as they're going through this process. And once that process ends, like those papers are signed, right? Helping them with the years that follow, because it's a journey, right? And even if there's no children, it's still a journey of becoming your best self and figuring out what you want your life to look like, and helping these parents as they co-parent through the years. Because just remember, if you have a child, co-parenting does not end the day that child turns 18. And it doesn't end the day that last child support check is written or received. It's truly a lifelong journey, and I want to help people do it in a better way.
So where can our listeners go if they want to find out more about your coaching services?
Absolutely. So you can go to my Instagram or my Facebook. It is The Texas Divorce Coach, and they can message me on there. I'm on LinkedIn as Amy Tyson, or you can also go to my website, happinessintheheartache.com.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for hopping on with us again today. And for our listeners, if you enjoyed this podcast, please take a second to leave us a review and subscribe so you can enjoy future episodes.
The Texas Family Law Insiders podcast is sponsored by the Draper Law Firm. We help people navigate divorce and child custody cases and handle family law appellate matters. For more information, visit our website at www.draperfirm.com.